So I just got home from watching James Gunn's Superman, and now I'm gonna review it. Going into the movie, of course, I'd heard really nothing but good things about it. Right, leading up to it, weeks in advance, even months in advance with the pre-screenings, nothing but positivity about this movie. And then I had a friend reach out to me earlier this week who he had somehow gotten early tickets to see it on Tuesday, and he said, we're so back, right? And he was kind of a biased. He's a biased source because he really likes James Gunn, but I thought that was a good enough reason for me to secure a ticket for today. And I was planning to see it anyway, eventually. And I gotta say, I am not disappointed. This was a great film. This is definitely better than almost anything Marvel has put out recently. I don't know that I would say that it is better than Thunderbolts. I think that would be petty and pedantic. I would say that this is equally as good as Thunderbolts. It is a great film. And I really do not have any complaints about it at all. It was fantastically enjoyable. The performances, and I'll delve more into these details, were great. I mean, these were some crazy good performances and extremely well written versions of these characters present in these films. My biggest problem going into the movie, I thought it was going to be really messy, because based on the trailers and how many characters, and it seemed like there was a lot of different plots happening. But actually, when you get in there, there's really just one plot. And while there are a lot of characters, they're used really well and really effectively so that it never feels like it's too much. You get just the right amount of every character, and you got a great idea of who they are, how they fit into this world. They had a purpose in the film, and in basically all the cases, I was like, wow, I immediately want to see more of this character in this world. Um, and I think that this sets a great precedent for the new James Gunn led DC universe, especially the decision to jump straight into this universe that has, as the title card tells you, like 300 years of metahuman lore to dive into. This is not a situation where we're starting out from, ground zero and building up. We've been in this. We're in the deep end. People start throwing around these crazy terms like pocket dimension, like this, like it's just Tuesday. This is not weird to anybody. They've been here. They've seen it all before. A giant monster shows up in Metropolis. Nobody really cares. It's just another day of the week. And that is a great way to start this because it means we're only going to get crazier from here. A lot of people have been describing this as very much the most comics version of Superman. And I think that that is very accurate because it does feel very wacky and very lighthearted and very free to do whatever it wants. But at the same time, I don't think it falls into the trap that Marvel has recently, where you take Doctor Strange, for instance, Multiverse of Madness, which I really did not like that film, where that movie and a lot of movies recently, they've gone too far, where they are very comic book inspired, but they just lose themselves in the nonsense. And especially they weigh themselves down. They tie this heavy ass anchor to their legs and they jump in the deep end of exposition and trying to explain shit to you. This movie doesn't explain a fucking thing to you. They expect you to just either know or go with it. And it works. I mean, if you know anything about comic books or superheroes at this point, which is an extremely reasonable assumption that you know something, you know enough to go with this. They hedge that bet extremely well. There's no exposition here at all about basically anything. They don't explain how Lex Luthor can do anything that he does. They don't explain anybody. They don't tell you shit about the Green Lanterns, right? Like they don't bother explaining anything, and that is fantastic. They don't waste any time at all, which helps. I'm not even really sure how long the movie was. I think it was about 2.5 hours, maybe, but it was extremely well paced, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I was never bored. Um, I did not dislike any part of the film. In a lot of movies, there's usually one part of the film or several sections of a film that I think are cringe or boring or not good, or maybe I look at it and I'm like, man, that was some bad CGI. There was nothing like that here at all that ever took me out of the film. And that's just an incredibly high level of like production quality across the board. I loved it. In terms of the character performances, these are fantastic. Now, I didn't hate Henry Cavill. I liked him as a person. Actually, he seems like a decent guy, and I liked him I especially like him as an actor. I mean, in Mission Impossible, he was fucking great, and even in The Witcher, and the way that he kind of tried to stand up for that show, even if he ultimately failed. And I thought his performance as Superman, he did the best that he could given the material he was given. Okay. But I did also really like the CW's interpretation of Superman recently, you know, from what I hear about it and from what I've seen about it. I haven't watched the entire series because I'm kind of done with the CW. And I'm not going to sit here and compare this to the old Superman movies because, to be honest with you, I haven't watched them. And literally everybody else has and is going to compare this movie to the classic Superman movies. Um, but I have, seen some of the animated stuff as well, Justice League, a bit of the animated series. Um, this is a fantastic interpretation of Superman. I'm not sure. I mean, the Justice League, Superman was constantly kind of getting the shit pushed in for one reason or another. But it was kind of just understated. Superman was just part of the Justice League. There was never a whole point being made about him particularly being vulnerable in any way. But here, Superman, he really is just another guy who happens to be the strongest guy on the planet. But he can still get his shit pushed in. Now, granted, we only ultimately see him fighting, some pretty dangerous threats. But even the threats that he faces, not all of them, like in terms of power scaling, are equal to him. Some of them are, but some of them are more clever threats where it's like, well, this person doesn't, they're not going to fist fight you, but they have other ways they could incapacitate you. And that's interesting because I'm not really sure that all writers would be willing or able to have Superman face these threats. And so that was really interesting to see. It gave stakes to scenes where something was happening and you're like, how is he going to get out of this? And that was interesting to see. I appreciated that he was like a very good guy, a very nice guy, but he wasn't at all a pushover, you know? Like he could even be not a dick, but in the trailers you see him doing the interview with Lois and he does kind of lose his cool, because he gets very passionate and he gets very frustrated trying to understand this complex morality that he just doesn't operate by, and I appreciated seeing that complexity in his character that I think a lot of people would not be willing to write, and people don't have a perception of Superman. They see him as like this perfect Boy Scout, and I'm not sure that even the animated series ever really tried to contrast this, where you ever see Superman being anything less than like the perfect, kind, stoic, diplomatic hero at all times, until suddenly they decided to do a full 180 and he was, what was it called? The Justice, I can't remember, the evil Justice League or Injustice, right? So I just appreciated that, like, that level of complexity to his character. And he was he was kind of a funny guy too. Like he was just a really believable character, and I appreciated too the little story arc and character arc about him sort of trying to understand and later explaining what makes him who he is, which I very much appreciate because I put this into my own writing basically, is that it was his parents that helped create him, right? They made him into Superman, into the good man that he is, because they raised him right. It has nothing to do with his Kryptonian heritage, and it has nothing to do with his powers or anything else. He was raised by good people, so he turned out to be a good person, right? Of course, that's not a universal truth, but it's a good bet to place, right? It's a pretty safe bet. So I appreciated that. You know, there's a trend in this movie of simple, seemingly very obvious, and yet somehow not, and effective messaging. And I hope that those messages like will work and be effective and reach people. But I'll come back to that. But as good as Superman was, I mean, obviously the best performance in the movie was Lex Luthor. This guy, and I just forgot his name. I had it a second ago. I think Nicholas something. I can't remember. He was absolutely incredible. I mean, this guy was such a psychopathic narcissist even from the jump. I mean, you never really see this guy being anything less than completely insane. His obsession with Superman has already peaked, and as the movie continues, you just continue to unfold the layers on this to see how far this guy is willing to go just to destroy this guy who has never done anything to him, just for his own vanity, basically, because he can't tolerate the idea of there being anyone better than him. And it's just in the performance of how much of a smug, arrogant, cocky motherfucker he is, but he does back it up. I mean, when he's and again, you see this in the trailer, when he's in the Fortress of Solitude and he takes the engineer with him and she's throwing her saw blades around. I mean, those things come within inches of his face multiple times, and he does not break a sweat. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't blink. This dude is cold as ice. When Superman barges into his office and says, "Where's the dog?" he does not give a shit that the strongest man on earth just barged into his office. This is a cool operator, dude. This dude is heartless. And then, you know, again, you continue to fold back the layers of how much this guy has done, what all he has accomplished, what all he has risked for the sake of this, and how far he's willing to go. You immediately understand that Lex Luthor is the biggest threat. Like, it does not matter if Brainiac shows up, if Darkseid shows up. It does not matter who shows up in this universe. Lex Luthor is the greatest threat anyone is ever going to face on this planet. It was just enthralling to watch, and I appreciated also that it wasn't just him. He had a whole team working with him, and of course, this is just a bunch of like crazy fucking sycophants being like, "Yes, sir, whatever you say, boss. You know, right away, boss." And it was this weird thing of like, and I think this was intentional, where the people working for Lex treat him like a god, and that's the thing that he kind of hates about Superman. And that's how, you know, obviously Zack Snyder sort of treated Superman in his movies. I feel that was partially intentional, the way that these people treat Lex in this movie. I thought it was interesting that he does accomplish this with the help of a lot of different people operating this sort of mobile command center, observing everything, and they again reveal how much control and power and insight he has throughout the city and throughout the world. It was just great. And again, the decision to drop you in to this world that is so established, where Lex already has all of this, you don't need to spend any time at all building him up, You don't have to have any kind of arc for him. He's just full swing supervillain. It's wonderful. I loved it, and I'm very excited to see, how this character evolves and where this is going. Personally, I would like to see Brainiac show up in this universe, and I feel like he will because they are putting this focus on Superman, and Supergirl shows up as well. She's announced to get her own movie, and she obviously it does show up in this movie to a capacity. Um, I think Brainiac will show up, and that is going to be really dangerous. If this guy gets his hands on some otherworldly tech like that, we're pretty fucked. um, and the glimpse that we do get of Kara in this movie, because it is a glimpse, again, makes me optimistic about the interpretations of these characters that we're going to get. I am now optimistic about what we're going to get with Batman. I'm still a little upset that we're probably not going to get Robert Pattinson's Batman, because I did like that movie and I like that interpretation of the character, and especially because it ends on the message of hope. Of his whole character arc is learning hope instead of vengeance. I feel like James Gunn can swing that into this universe. I'm just not sure that he will. But whatever decision he makes, I am now confident that he will make the correct one based on his interpretation of Superman, of Supergirl, of Lex Luthor. Even Lois Lane was very good here. She didn't have a whole lot to do, but I thought she was good in the role. Again, no complaints. She just didn't have that much to do, but I enjoyed her performance in the capacity that we did get her. The action scenes were pretty good. I'm not going to say that they were like the best I'd ever seen. I don't think he used his powers very much. He used very little laser vision. There was no ice breath. He used a little bit of like just breath. So it was mostly kind of just punching things, and that's fine, for the first Superman movie. There was nothing particularly exciting. It was cool when the other heroes showed up and you got to see what they could do. That was fun. And the villains as well. But the action was enjoyable. It was just I wouldn't say that it was anything particularly exciting. But really what I enjoyed most about this movie ultimately was how incredibly upfront and on the nose this movie was. Because the plot of the movie is that Superman goes to a US aligned foreign power that is trying to invade another foreign power or a foreign country, and stops that country from initiating a war. And people do not like this, And obviously they make up some names for these countries. But it could not possibly be any more clear that James Gunn intends for these countries to be Israel and Palestine. It really could not be any more clear. Especially during the interview scene where Lois is grilling him about this, and they both explain the exact particulars of the situation. It's extremely clear that is exactly what's going on. And so I just appreciate that there is such a clear stance on this, about it. Look, Israel's wrong, bro. This shit is fucked. You can't do this. It doesn't matter who you're allied with. It doesn't matter. Superman literally says this. I don't care if the other country's not perfect or whatever. That's not an excuse, okay? I appreciate that incredibly clear messaging and stance. And also, similarly, right? This is in the news. James Gunn has been interviewed about it. People are talking about it. Superman is literally an alien in every sense of the word. And that is a thread in this movie that gets pulled on. And again, they take a very similar stance here, and I appreciate that. We need that kind of extremely clear messaging. And having it in a Superman movie is great because ultimately, if you walk out of a Superman movie and you're saying, I can't believe Superman has gone woke, I think you've lost, right? At that point, you are completely transparent, and I can see the devil behind you pulling your strings and like with his hand firmly all the way up your ass, right? It's super transparent at that point if you're trying to grift or talk down this film because of its political stances, because of how Superman interprets these incredibly clear analogs to real world events, right? I know there's also been a comic panel going around about Green Lantern saying, there's a problem when criticizing you makes someone inherently suspicious. I know that's been going around too, but the reality is in this movie, Superman is just genuinely a good guy. And so his interpretation of this situation, it's not clouded by any of this other bullshit. And again, especially when you get into the particulars of the situation and the details that are revealed in the plot, the guy's right. So I appreciate that. And I hope that this movie will have a positive cultural effect as well. Not just in the moment, but overall, right? Because that should be the effect of art, is that it should have a cultural effect and ideally a positive one. It amazes me that there are so many movies that come out that attempt to say something politically and fail, or that are political and yet have nothing to say, when a movie about Superman, who I think is perhaps the most inherently apolitical character ever, has so much to say and says it so well. There are so many things said even beyond this, just subtle things. I don't think anything in this movie is subtle. Okay, I'll take that back. But things that go by fairly quickly and that are not focused on, but that are there, right? Again, comparing it to like Captain America, Captain America 2 and 3, especially 2, have a lot to say. They are very political movies in their plot and also in their themes and their messaging, okay? Whereas Captain America 4 is perhaps the most political in its story and yet has absolutely nothing to say at all in its messaging, which is profoundly confusing, right? And to talk about another movie that I reviewed on this channel, a movie that I hated, Alex Garland's Civil War, a movie that was also inherently political, which he did not have to make it. He chose that. He made that decision. And in my opinion, which is not universally shared, but I think that it is the correct opinion, also had fuck all to say. And I find it interesting that actually I was watching a video by a female and a feminist talking about another film of his called Men, which attempted to speak to the female and the feminist experience, where she thinks that he tried to do that and he did it very poorly. So I'm starting to get this impression that maybe Alex Garland just isn't very good at this, right? It just amazes me that these movies can either try and fail or simply don't try at all. And then a movie like this can come out about this character. And from James Gunn, maybe I need to go back. I didn't think Guardians of the Galaxy was very political, right? I didn't think Suicide Squad was that political. I mean, obviously there was a little bit of political commentary in there, but I didn't think it was that political. So for James Gunn to come out and produce this at this time, at this moment, for this film to drop at this moment is kind of historic. I really liked it. This is definitely one of my favorite superhero movies now. I would very much like to rewatch this sometime. I don't know if I'm going to go out to theaters again to see it, just because it's currently inconvenient for me to do that. But I look forward to watching this again, and I am now very eager to see where DC is going with this. I'm optimistic about the future of DC under James Gunn's direction. And I'm glad that Marvel now has competition because Fantastic Four comes out later this month. And I don't know, man. Maybe it will be good, but the bar has been set quite high now. They need to at least reach that bar, right? That's now the standard. And this can only be good for both companies. Marvel had it easy before because DC was a joke. Now, Marvel needs to catch up. And I think they've already been doing it. Once both companies are actively competing to outdo each other, we're going to be in a new renaissance of superhero films, right? I look forward to that. So I really enjoyed this movie. You should definitely go see it. Don't listen to any of these fucking shithead, anti-woke grifters about XYZ, whatever about the movie. The movie's fantastic. Go watch it. And then buy it on Blu-ray or whatever you choose to do.